This is an Israelite Jules recording.
The Book of Remembrance of our ancient grandmothers. Chapter 3. An account of the original 10 guidances of Anokis, and also of Mahal, discovering the pool of heaven, and bringing a profound awareness of Watsu the Lamb to the righteous.
Now, after viewing these things, I began to wonder what else the Lord was doing to raise up a people after his own heart, in the land of Qatar. And it came to pass, that I once again took up Urim to look. And as I cast my eyes about to see what I would see, I saw Enoch the scribe of righteousness, engraving upon a stone tablet, great things before the Lord. Now, I loved Enoch greatly, and respected him for his holy walk with Watsu the Lamb, and I felt like I knew him. And I beheld him sitting against a large stone with one knee up, upon which was the stone that he was carving into a tablet. And when I came closer to look, and I beheld the tablet, I was astonished, for it was very much like the tablet that I now had before me to interpret by Urim. And we had always called it the family tablet, because of the man and woman on it, and the instructions it contained about the uniqueness and differences between men and women. But upon seeing this, I could now understand why I had been seeing so much detail about the early development of the family of mankind. And I began to look very intently, and with real awareness, as I now could learn what I desired to know. And the Lord said to me, that Enoch was writing, so that Anokis could have happiness, and so he could rest in the joys of his people, as they lived out their gift of life. And Enoch continually sought out ways to comfort Anokis, for he walked with him. And as I watched with keen interest, I heard Enoch call it the guidance tablet of Anokis. And he said, it contained his guidance to his people, intended to lead them to happy living. And when this passed before my eyes, I was much moved upon by the Spirit, for it was made known to me, that upon this guidance tablet was the original 10 commandments. And I recalled that the Lord had referred to such tablets as the tablets of Elda. Now Elda means, simply God is here. And it is the name of his abode in the midst of eternity. And ever since I first heard there were such things as tablets of Elda, I was very desirous to discover them. And this tablet came in a day before anyone thought of Anokis, in ways to conceive of him, as being one who would give commandments. For the ancients thought of him much the same way one would think of a little child. And all know a little child would not command anyone. But, even as those who are holy can be led by a child, they can be guided by them also. And, because of that which I had previously viewed with Urim, I knew it was one of the very tablets Watsu gave to Moses on Mount Sinai. And I know that there are copies of this tablet, for I have seen some of them. And the scribes, and I, were very grateful to the Lord for opening up to us this wonderful opportunity to know the truth of these things. For the wonder of the truth of Anokis is marvelous indeed. And it came to pass, that I looked upon this scene being filled with desire. And I beheld the tablet with clarity. And I was amazed, that it was so much like the one we had. And the Lord knew the desires of my heart, and he began to speak to me. And he pointed to the tablet, as he spoke. And he spoke each one of the 10 guidances to me one at a time. And as it is so often, with Urim, the truth explodes in your heart and mind, and it was difficult not to be distracted into the depth of meaning with each one. Accordingly, I spoke each one to the scribes as he said them to me, but I could not say all that was before me with each one, because it was too vast. And the Lord said, 1. You are to love Anokis with all your heart, and with all your mind, and with all your power. And when I wondered what he meant by the word power, and he answered and said, that your power comes from all of your holy relationships with the spirits of life, in that which is holy in creation. And the implications of this are staggering in the immensity of the scope of it. But let me say, it means to have the kind of relationship with element that expresses always and only the loving kindness of Anokis with your fellows. And that love is unconditional, never varying away from his gracious nature. And many things raced through my mind, that the Lord had taught during his walk upon the earth. And again the Lord pointed, and he said, 2. You are to always walk in the holiness of the sanctity of marriage, and to anticipate it from your childhood. And again, great truths swept through my mind. And he said, the word anticipate means for you to be pure in heart, and chaste from your childhood, waiting for your rightful spouse, and saving yourself solely for them, and from all others. And I recalled the marriage counsel, which the Lord had brought to Enoch, which says, that children should be taught from their childhood to have a deep expectation that they will be romantically attractive, and completely loved by the spouse which Enochist has created for them as a man and a woman standing together before him. And the Lord said, 3. You are to follow no other example in religion, but the loving kindness of Enochist, and that which was established by the righteous with him during the first great sevening. And one immediately knew that this would exclude any use of religion for gain, or to exert control over your fellows, or to use religion to bring assurances to yourself of a future that satisfied your desires for a place of good standing, without the need to walk in repentance and humility, and holiness with perfect virtue. And again, the Lord said, 4. Each person is to love their fellow, and deem them equal to themselves. And the marvelous wisdom of this simple statement spoke loudly to my soul. And it would start with a person not classifying themselves, or stigmatizing themselves as rich, or poor intelligent, or ignorant beautiful, or ugly, nor important, or unimportant. And if they did not classify themselves, they would not classify others, and could truly see their fellow, no matter who they are, as equal to themselves. And the Lord said, 5. You are to respect and love your children, and protect them from evil, and diligently teach them the ways of holiness. And upon hearing this, it was immediately made known to me, that when a parent follows this guidance, children would not have to be told to honor their father and mother. And children who have always known only respect and love, can more easily respect and love their gift of life from Enochist, and grow to be wise during their passages. And they will love their elders, and they will be loved as elders, in their old age. And the Lord said, 6. You are to purify yourselves by sevens, in all things. And when I heard this, I knew that this was the basis for keeping the Sabbath day. And it was that which Shabuah was founded upon, and the weeks of the holy days, and the years of jubilees, and many such important observances. And I knew that Enochist himself used this guidance in the acts of creation. By his son Matzah the Lamb, when the world was created, and Olam was transformed into Eden. And again, when the natural world of Eden was transformed into our temporal world, during the first 7 generations of mankind. And the Lord said again, 7. You are to respect the Creator Matzah the Lamb, who is himself the living water that issues forth to follow each person that finds breath, and not lay claim to that which he has made for other persons. And my eyes were open to know that this has far-reaching meaning in our lives. And we should be happily attached to the circumstances of our lives, and we should be content with our possessions, and not desire to have what others may have acquired. And we are not to view our worth in terms of the satisfaction of possessions, nor should we allow ourselves to be controlled by longings for acceptance and high esteem, and the ease of pleasures and comforts. And I felt the Spirit say, that we should view as our possessions only that which Enochist has given to us to be ours. And I could tell how compatible having all things common was to this guidance. And the Lord continued speaking, and he said, 8. You are to respect all life, and guard with diligence all the lives of those who are the objects of creation. And of course, all human beings, whether they be friend or foe, holy or evil, powerful or weak, are in fact all the objects of creation, simply by being created as the children of Enochist. And I know this means all human life, even to include one's enemies. And it prohibits participating in war in any way. And it also prohibits infanticide of the unborn, and using death as punishment. And continuing, the Lord said, 9. You are to seek no other authority than the authority of Elda, which brings a response from the Irkod Shoy. Who are the holy watchers of heaven? And with clarity, I understood that this means we are not to pursue obtaining authority from the world, by license, or certification, or appointment to position. And we are not to approach in any way obtaining authority by effective subtleties over any person or creature. And lastly, the Lord said, 10. You are to bear up under the burden of oppression without violence. And I know that oppression takes on many forms, all the way from the imposition of impure moral values to being occupied, by violent forces, of the armies of nations. And that under these circumstances, loving enemies, praying for those who despitefully use you, and not resisting evil, but turning the other cheek, and blessing those who curse you, and doing good to them that hate you, are acts that reflect the very heart of Enochist. And the Lord said to me, caused Enoch to write the 10 guidances, to preserve the 7 joinings of Masauziel. And the guidances undergird them unabated through the ages. And it came to pass, that upon receiving these 10 guidances, for happy living, that I began to ponder, how this delightful, and holy advice from our loving Father Enochist, was altered to become the 10 Commandments. And as I thought upon this new development, the Lord began to open it up to me by the Urim, and by magnifying His Spirit in me. And I began to know, and understand the pathway His gentle guidances have taken among the families of the earth. And this matter began to be very instructive to me, albeit sad. And I saw that after Enoch made the tablet, and he began to teach with it, the 10 guidances for happy living were spread abroad among all of the people in Nod, who remained with their old parents. And all the people in the regions of mine began to use them in all their daily lives. And they certainly all knew that it brought rich happiness for Enochist indeed. And starting in about the 8th generation, the guidance tablet began to influence those who learned of it in so much that parents began to be able to clearly identify to their children the importance of their decisions in the passages of life. And great care was taken in their important decisions, for the sake of Enochist. And with younger children, parents could begin at an early age to teach the importance of chastity, and of loving and kind behavior toward God and man. And by these things, virtue abounded in their lives as they grew into adulthood. And happiness in the people flourished. And I saw that the tablet was taken to Qatar. And I was very interested to see how they would use the guidance it contained. Now I knew that the people of Enoch would return to Eden. And the movement of the rich collective spirit they shared as a people would express in a unique way their feelings for Enochist. And I wondered if the people of Qatar would deal with the tablet in a different way. And I began to see a marvelous truth. The people of mine, in the regions of Maladith, focused their lives, and their religion, on their love for Enochist. And their view was to always see to the watch care of the tender heart of Enochist. And they saw themselves to be created to be his companions, as they walked in the way with him. And there never could be a people more intent to see to the happiness and comfort of Enochist than the people of mine. And they sought to know the desires of his heart continually, in all their decisions, and in all their interactions among themselves. And they grieved at any thought of his disappointment, or despair. And thus, their love for Enochist became the definition and motivation for all their repentance. And they confessed openly to one another their shortcomings in this regard. And all who heard these confessions were known to repent together with them, because their hearts were one. And this practice became so common among them, that when repentance occurred over important issues, all the people repented together, and the Irkod Shoy could feel it in the heart of Enochist to be making use of Matzah the lamb, so completely was a comfort to him indeed. And I saw that this trait of their hearts being drawn together in the face of sin was strong, because of the example of their old father Yatzgod. For he repented for all the sins of any person that came to his attention before the day he began to be called Gabriel. And as Gabriel, he continued to do so all his days among the righteous. And the people of Enoch followed his example in all their ways. And in this way, the love God had for Enochist was multiplied in the hearts of the people. And the western gateway to Eden observed all these things with a happy heart. And thus, the welfare of Enochist was uppermost on all their collective minds. And because of their tendency to view the information on the guidance tablet in this way, they commonly thought that the guidances for happy living were for the purpose of Enochist being happy. And the Spirit said to me, that because of this kind of a pure faith, that was known in Eden, most often in mine, the Lord could appear to them personally, and many times, face to face. And while they were all guided by the Spirit, they found him to be increasingly appearing to them in their times of need. And I am sure that this kind of faith led to their return to Eden. But the people of Qatar, even though they were righteous and a holy people, they did not have the example of their old father Yatzgad, nor the ministry of Enoch, and the mothers of mine. And it came to pass, that I could see the character of the people of Qatar, and how the Lord built into them the exclusive tendency to be led by his Spirit. And the matter became clear to me. For I saw, in them a new kind of faith. One which would allow their expressions of righteousness to endure in the face of the kinds of changes that were to spread out upon the earth right before and after the flood. And the Lord knew that the process of the natural world, becoming temporal, would be complete with the establishment of the covenant of Gabriel. And it would influence the return to Eden by the righteous people of Enoch. And that this would require those who would be holy to be able to be led in their daily walk by his Spirit as they lived surrounded by, and intermingled with growing wickedness, and evil. For the perfect faith of those of mine was such that they could not remain in the temporal world, but must of a necessity be translated back to Eden, into the very presence of Enochist. And this unique kind of faith, in the lives of those living in Qatar, was central to the task of Matzah the Lamb, as he prepared the world of his Father for the long duration. For all their leading had to be by the leading of his Spirit only, and they could no longer depend upon him appealing to the righteous daily, but only on special occasions, according to their purity and faith. And I knew that the Lord had led to Qatar the very kind of people who would lay the foundations necessary to have the kind of faith that would sustain the purposes of his Father during the course of the temporal earth, when wickedness would swell up to overshadow multitudes of people. And in the end times, there shall arise once again a people with the kind of faith that was known in mine. And the circle will become complete. All this being the case, it can be understood that the unique character of those he led to Qatar were to have the kind of faith that they could be led by the Spirit, with few personal appearances of the Lord, and the holy ones. And because of all these things, the people of Qatar thought the guidances for happy living were meant to keep them in the way to enable them to always be able to be happy, and in the spiritual condition, to hear the Spirit of Enochist clearly. And thus, the Lord prepared for the long duration the world with a sustaining faith for the righteous. And he also instilled in the hearts of the people the foundations upon which Shabuah would be built. And it came to pass, that as I thought upon these things, I continued to wonder how the gentle guidances came to be corrupted to be expressed in the form of the 10 Commandments. And I pondered upon what forces among men could have performed this. And I saw that the people of Qatar did not live in community as those of mine but lived in many scattered encampments. And their contact with each other was sparse, and accordingly, among them, there began to be various expressions of how the guidances were to be viewed. For some began to view them as rules for the happiness of the people. And over time it was put forward that the people of the land should require them of each other. And this idea was one of the first expressions of a collective social consciousness. And the Lord rested his Spirit upon them, for they were gentle and caring in all they sought to maintain among their people. But as wickedness increased in Toa and in Helia, all around them, fear began to grow in the intensity of it, prior to the flood. And because of that fear, the guidances began to be more strictly enforced by some in the outlying encampments of Qatar, where the wicked would sally forth. And it came to pass, that when Enoch divided the earth, there was for a time, a complete separation between the righteous and the wicked. And the people of Qatar found some relief for a short time, from fear which they were beset with. The wicked moved into the valleys of Helia from all the regions of Toa, which they inhabited. And you will see that after the flood, there were hands of freed slaves that began to control those people seen to be under them. And these began to pursue dominance over one another, and they would have a prominent one who ruled over all their people. And that person would issue orders to them, according to his every whim and desire. And then the guidances began to be thought to be commandments for the first time. And thus, it was among the wicked. And these commandments were enforced with threats. And the guidances began to be just a part of that which a person was obliged to perform. And by, because the secret society of Seku had masters who presented themselves to be sons of God, the commandments began to be viewed as commandments of God. And thus, we see that the concept that God gave commandments originated within those who walked in darkness. And I beheld it, and I wept in my heart to see what had become of the gentle guidances for happy living that were brought to the people by the one who is loving kindness. And I saw that through this means, it was the forces of evil that had charge of how the 10 guidances were to be viewed, and how they would be altered. And the rulers of men altered them to suit their designs. And some, they abandoned altogether. And this spiraled downward, went so far, that the very wise counsel of the Great Holy One himself began to be used to destroy the lives of his loved ones, insomuch that if any person was found to deviate in even a small way from the commandments, they would be killed. And not just killed, but hated to death, by the act of throwing stones at them, until they died. And I saw that throwing stones became the element of wickedness in the hands of the cruel, and it is the ultimate act of hatred arising out of the darkest pit. And thus, the powers of evil began with something completely holy, and gentle, and pure, and turned it to use it to destroy the gift of life, and all heaven was brought into distress. And the Spirit said, that to state, or act upon the idea that Anokized is cruel, or vengeful, or wrathful, and that he kills, and destroys, is in fact using his name in vain. And I saw, that the wicked were able to define Anokized in this way by the use of blood as the element wickedness. And great will be their embarrassment when they stand before him. And such will enter into the light of his presence wholly unclean. And this evil was expanded, even to the extent that when Anokized came to dwell in the temporal world as a man himself, he was reviled and persecuted, in the name of the gentle guidances of his father. And even his torturous death was justified by what the 10 guidances became. And all of it was done in the name of his father. And it was a hard thing to behold in the vision. And my heart was moved with sorrow. But I came to understanding, and could feel profoundly the heart of Matzah the Lamb who is Anokized in the flesh. And his patience was a marvelous thing to consider. And so the Lord answered my inquiry as to what forces had been at work to alter the gentle guidances of Anokized. And my heart was grieved to know of all my dear Redeemer had suffered at the hands of the wicked in the name of his Father, who was the one in whose likeness he healed, and blessed, and spoke, and had his magnificent compassion. And it came to pass, that after viewing all these things, I rested for a while, but soon, I began again to look with Urim upon the land of Qatar. And there, I saw that Mahal is growing up in righteousness. And he is a large, and gentle youth. And he is very much joined in his soul to all the Irkod Shoy. And he communes with them. And he is very observant to see everything that is being felt around him. And his fellows consider him to be easily distracted. And I can see that he is a traveler who can pass swiftly across the land. And he was often asked to accompany his fellows in their tasks, for he can carry heavy loads, and he lightens their burdens to make their tasks easier. Now remember, that Mahal was raised up in the encampments of Qatar, and he has no memory of the regions of Nod. And he has spent pleasant years in the Pishon valley near the river. And Mount Qatar can be seen towering against the sky in the southwest. And there are many streams descending down into the valley, from the heights of the regions of Qatar. And these streams converge in the midst of the valley to form the river there. And these streams can be seen to run milky white with snow melt in the springtime. And as I look with Urim, I can see Mahal laboring at some task in the rolling hills on the south side of the valley. And they are fitting wooden beams in place. And it came to pass, that the men sent Mahal out, to fetch a burden of a large beam. And he is strong to carry it upon his back. And he is bent under the weight of it. And he must cross some streams to bring it back, and he is behind his fellows coming along. And when he set his burden down, he discovered that the stream before him was not high with snow melt, but it was clear and sweet. And there was no high water mark upon the shoreline. And he stopped, and looked at the stream. And the Spirit of the Lord flooded over him. And he bent down to drink. And when he drank, the Spirit drew near, and touched his heart. And when he caught up to his companions, he told them of the stream, and the presence of the Spirit of the Lord. But they paid him no mind, for they were ready to depart for home. And when he arrived home, he told his father what he had found. And when he rehearsed about the strong presence of the Spirit, Shamar his mother heard it. And she sat listening with care. And in the night, she walked, and prayed, that Matzah would reveal to her son the meaning of the strong presence of the Spirit when he found the clear stream, for it had been prophesied at his birth that he would find living water. And the Lord visited her with his Spirit, and he said, "You must instruct Mahal to return, to see once again the clear stream, and I will meet with him there." And that night, Mahal also received instruction from the Lord. And he dreamed a dream. And in his dream, he saw running pure water to be sweet, and filled with life. And when he beheld it, he saw it was desirable above any water he had ever seen. And he said, "Now, I have beheld the living water, that is spoken of by those in the land of Meladeth." And he was filled with the love of Anokized. And in his dream he exclaimed, "This water is desirable above all the waters of the earth." And he bent his knees down upon the earth, and drank his fill, until his soul was utterly filled with joy. And it came to pass, that when he awoke, he was so filled with emotion that he could not sleep. And the moon was full. And as he set about to walk with Matzah in the night, he found his mother to be walking there also. And he rehearsed his dream to her. And she also was filled with the Spirit, and she told him the message she too had received. And they embraced for the joy of the Lord. And Shamar prepared provision for him for his journey to go, and once again look upon the stream. And in his heart, he was intent to discover the source of this clear water, and why it did not have snow melt in it. And he wondered if perhaps his journey would take him to the heights of Mount Qatar, the holy mountain itself. And it came to pass, in the first light of day, Canaan anointed his son with the oil of life, to prepare him to fulfill the service of the Lord in his journey. And he put upon his shoulders a mantle of woven willow bark to indicate to any who saw him that he was on a sacred journey, and he was not to be disturbed. And it was a mantle like messengers wear when they are sent of the Lord. And it came to pass, that Mahal departed, and went with speed swiftly in the vigor of his youth. And on the third day of his journey, he found his way to the clear stream once again. And he was glad to find it, for he wondered as he went if it had not been just a dream. And it was late in the day, when he arrived. And he looked up toward the great mountain from whence the water came. And in his heart, he supposed that he may have to ascend the heights to discover the source of it. And with the first light of day, he set out to follow the stream to discover why it was clear. And I could see with Urim that on the east side of the stream there were bluffs and cliffs, and on the west side a smooth grassy plain. And Mahal traveled upon the west side. And thus, he went for the space of 3 days. And as he drew near the bottom of the mountain, he could see the river disappear into the forests of the mountain. And when it was late, he slept on a rise in the shelter of rocks. And it was his intention to start his ascent with the first fight of day. And he had made a rope. But, when he awoke, and began to travel, he saw in the distance that cliffs surrounded the place where the river came out of the forest. And he could not see any water falling over the brink. And he exclaimed, "From whence comes this stream?" And it came to pass, that he came to a large open meadow with no exit, except the way of the stream. And in his wonderment, he cast his eyes about to see if he could discover where the stream came from. And there in the middle of the quiet meadow, he saw a large pool of water arising out of the ground. And it was gushing upwards, and heaving itself upwards about knee-high to spill over onto rocks, to rush down into the valley below. And he saw that the entire river gushed forth out from the very heart of the sacred mountain. And Mahal went down upon his knees when he saw this great sight. And as he pondered upon what was before him, the spirit of Anokis drew near, and rested upon him with gentle power. And his eyes were opened, to see through the eyes of the spirit. And a voice called out his name. And the sound of it resonated from the cliffs surrounding the meadow. And he answered aloud, and he said, "Oh, Matzah, it is I." And a voice said, "All who would approach this pool of heaven, must kneel down, and bless Anokis. And then they may drink freely from it." And Mahal said, "Oh, Lord, how can I, being just a man, bless the Great One Anokis?" And the Lord said, "You have been brought here for a wise purpose in me. And now you have found the living water that issues forth from the heart of the holy mountain. Does not this water bear witness to you, that you are a treasure to me, and that I dearly love you, for you have a special purpose, that my Father desires of you?" And Mahal was filled with the Spirit, and the presence of the Lord. And he said, "O Lord, I have always thought that I would only be a helper to my companions. I did not know Anokis had a wise purpose for me." And the Lord said, "From this place, abundant truth, and love, shall arise up, and spill over. And my presence shall come in upon the family of man, to flow out from this place for a multitude of days. And that which transpires here will set the course of man upon the earth for a long duration. And this living water will accompany the spirits of the righteous who seek to find me with their whole souls. And a covenant shall issue forth in this place, and shall be renewed every season of harvest. And the righteous will seven themselves, with rich happiness, and abundant virtue. And Masauziel will view all that takes place here." And upon hearing this, Mahal was overcome with the presence of Anokis. And he fell asleep. And his spirit was caught up, to be embraced by the love of Anokis. And he dreamed a dream. And in his dream, he saw the pool of heaven arise up, and cover the earth, from horizon to horizon. And it came to pass, that I beheld the dream of Mahal. And I saw it with clarity. And it was very like a vision I had myself as a youth. And before Mahal, a vision came up before his face. And it was of the loving kindness of Anokis, and all the influence his people had known of his gentle guidance, and compassionate love. And as the heart of Mahal was basking in the joys of such all-consuming love, the view before his eyes changed. And now, before him, was a vision of Anokis in the form of a man, and he was bowed down under a burden which was causing him to stagger. And his suffering was before the eyes of Mahal. And his back was bruised, and bleeding. And sweat was mixed with dirt that was falling from his burden. And he appeared as though he could not stand under the weight of his great burden. And he was wearing the garments of a slave. And when Mahal beheld it, he cried out, "Oh, Anokis! What has happened to you? My eyes and heart cannot bear to see it. Please take this vision away or my heart will burst." And the view was taken from before his eyes. And there appeared the same image of Anokized again, but this time, he was not carrying a burden. Mahal's vision of Matzah the lamb, and he was dressed in righteousness. And an overflowing love for Matzah rose up in the heart of Mahal, and it spilled over. And Matzah said, "What happened to me was that I became a man, so that I could follow my children out of Eden. And I subjected myself to both all their joys, and also their sorrows. And I am not burdened by the sins of the righteous, for they loathe the living water. But I am burdened by the corruptions of the wicked. And some of the people know of me, but they do not know me, nor how to come to my aid, neither do they know all that I do in my service to my Father." And Matzah said, "This pool is the element of righteousness, to magnify the comprehension of the meaning and awareness of my following my children out of Eden, so that they may know how to live in the bosom of my Father, both in their joys and in their sorrows. And in order to do this, they must come to love me, with an overflowing love, that does not abate, neither will they turn aside from it, in the same manner that this water arise up out of the earth, and does not diminish. And I thus have the joys of the happiness of the children of my Father, and the burden of their sins and sorrows. And the covenant that will come to this place, and the practice of sevening, will cause love for me, in the form of the man, that I became to resound in the earth, resulting in the righteous having rich dominion over the earth." And thus, the dream ended. And Mahal was shaken to the center of his soul. And when he awoke he kneeled down, and drank from the pool of heaven. And I saw with Urim that in that moment Mahal was balm again, to awaken to the awareness of Anokized in all things. And his eyes were opened. And ever after he was not the same again. And he continually magnified the love of Matzah the lamb. And his mother sent a boy on a journey, but received a man when he returned home. And rich wisdom began to fill the heart of Mahal. And forever after he told and retold the vision of his dream with great effect to the hearts of the righteous. And I beheld, as he took his journey home. And he did not go with haste, but he went pondering all that had happened to him at the pool of heaven in the meadow. And he wondered what a covenant was, and the meaning of the practice of sevening. And it came to pass, that as Mahal approached to enter the encampment of his people, as he passed along the way he found a childhood friend to be walking in the evening twilight. And they met. And it was a lad named Rishuya. And Rishuya was taken aback at what he felt with Mahal, for it seemed as if he shone with the presence of the Lord. And the Spirit of the Lord was that which had led Rishuya to walk out in the evening. And after a moment, Rishuya said quietly, "What is it the Lord is doing as he passes by?" And Mahal sat down. And he rehearsed all that had happened when he had set out to find the stream. And he told him all that the Lord had said to him. And Mahal opened up to him everything concerning the living water. And he recited his dream to Rishuya, and he said, the Lord had mentioned a practice of sevening which he did not understand. And Rishuya was much moved, and he became resolved. And I saw that the souls of these two youths were joined in a deep and abiding friendship. And as I looked with Urim, I saw that Rishuya was small beside Mahal. And his name means that he is one who is foremost in the land to establish righteousness. And I looked with wonder upon the lad, for it seemed like a very big name for one so young and small. And as I looked upon him with Urim, the Lord said to me, he is the father of Barakah, and her sister Shemanadab. And his wife is one who is called Aku, she being of the lineage of Kenah. And Rishuya is a descendant of Chaddan. And I understand that the name Aku means a sweet reed, even the same as her father, who was the one who had killed his brother Mattaniah. And being of the seed of Kenah, it was clear to me that she was named after him. And in this matter, I was amazed at what it could mean. And it came to pass that Rishuya exclaimed, the Lord Matzah the Lamb is about doing great things, I will accompany you to see your mother. And he was filled with the Spirit. And when they arrived, Mahal would have related it all to his mother, but she restrained him. because she discerned that he was in a holy state. And the two lads went to sleep. And in the twilight on the next day, as they sat around the fire, Mahal told all who were present of that which occurred in his journey. And upon hearing all these things, his parents told Mahal how he had received his name. And they rehearsed to him all things concerning Micah and his messenger, and that their family had come to live in Qatar because it was said that the Lord had a wise purpose for him. And Mahal said, I did not ask the Lord what his purpose was for me. And Shamar exclaimed, that she too did not know. And it came to pass, that Mahal inquired of his mother what the practice of sevening could mean. And she rehearsed all things to him concerning the establishment of sevening, by their mother Kava at her rock of Ariel. And upon hearing this, Rishuya was very much moved, and she said, after some few days have passed, you must take your journey northward to find Micah. And tell him of all these things regarding the pool of heaven, that you have found, and he will know what the wise purpose the Lord has for you, for he is a dreamer of dreams, and a prophet. And he walks daily with Anokized. And I saw that the lads knew the way to the encampment of Micah. And they set out to see him. And his encampment was to the northeast upon the mountains, overlooking the Shaman Sea. And they descended into a high mountain valley where life was quiet, and pleasant, and remote to any who would pass by. And they sat down at the place of water, until they were asked to come forward into the encampment. And there they found Micah. And he was very old, and he was resting in the midst of many children. And because Mahal was wearing the mantle of a messenger, all the people gathered around to see what he would say, for many of them knew who he was, from the many dreams of their old father. And when it was told Micah that the boys from Shamar were come, he stirred himself, and asked for his cloak to be brought. And he put it upon the shoulders of Mahal. And all the people knew that this was a signal that all who were present should honor him. And the lad was much embarrassed before all the people. And he said, Father, why do you honor me, for I am only a lad? And Micah said, I have had visions in the night telling me that you were coming, and that you would help me find the pool of heaven. For I have sought to find it for many years, and I knew that the Lord would discover it to me when all was ready. And upon hearing this, Mahal was astonished, and he said, Oh, Father, that is why I have come. And it came to pass, that Mahal started at the beginning, and he related all that had transpired, in his discovering the stream, that ran clear, and of the prayers, and counsel of his mother, and of the anointing, and the mantle from his father. And when he told of finding the pool of heaven, all the people gasped, and old Micah wept for joy. And Micah insisted that he hear every word the Lord had said to Mahal. And it was told him, that before drinking from the pool of heaven a person must kneel down, and bless Anokized. And Micah wanted to know every detail of the pool of heaven and also the surrounding area. And he rejoiced at the news of the covenant and practice of sevening. And when Mahal rehearsed his dream, Micah was astonished beyond measure. And he desired to hear it over and over again. And as I looked upon this scene, I was amazed, and I wondered why this pool of heaven was so important to Micah. And I recalled that the vision of created purpose of Micah was to set the path of the people to be straight, and vary not. And now, I can see that this pool of heaven was the element of righteousness, that could be influential to cause deep love for Matzah the Lamb. Who is the living water? And this love was to become the central dominant force in the lives of the righteous people of the world for many long generations, even to the end of time. And the idea that Anokized would manifest himself in the temporal world as a man, was very central to the task of preparing the world for the absence of the people of Enoch. And from the use of this element would come the perception that knowledge and understanding of the burden of Matzah the Lamb could be sent abroad, among the children of men, from one generation, another, so he could have help and assistance. And I saw that the concepts the people had about Anokized were general, and undefined. But now, the people would come to know Enochi's through the man that he became, and through the one who refreshes, and forgives, and teaches, and guides, and who is known to be one, who walks with them, in all their daily walk, and who understands their every thought, and deed. And thus, the heart, and soul of Micah, knew that the discovery of this pool of heaven, meant that, what he knew of Matzah the Lamb, would be magnified in the hearts of the people over time. And the transformation he longed for, would finally come. And all the people could seven themselves, in their devotion to the truth, and in the richness of their love for him. And it came to pass, that Mahal continued, and he told Micah that the Lord had a wise purpose for him, but, that neither he, nor his mother knew what it was. And it came to pass, that Micah pondered upon these things, a good long while. And in the morning, he was resolute in his bearing. And as they were eating together, he asked to be told once again concerning the pool of heaven, and all the area surrounding it, and most importantly the dream he had. And when they finished eating, he said, that he would, that the people prepare, for there to come a blessing upon the lads. And when all was prepared, the people gathered with listeners. And Micah was filled with the Spirit. And the spirit of prophecy descended into his heart. And he put his hands on Mahal, and he said, From your posterity shall come those who will establish encampments of holiness called mine. And this will come to comfort Enochi's. And by, a son of yours will arise, and be consecrated, and he will disclose to the righteous, and to my old father the way back to Eden. And from this son will issue forth many divisions upon the earth, which will affect the heavens above, and the earth beneath. And these divisions will preserve the purposes of Enochi's in creation. And you are called by Enochi's to safeguard and be a defense for the people of Qatar. And your vision is to build a wall against the encroachment of evil upon this people. And you will wear my mantle to celebrate the joys of Matzah the Lamb, and my garment to bear his sorrows with him. And from your posterity will come a man who will be inscribed first among all men. And he will influence the multitudes of the earth to be able to choose to know the Lord, or not. And it is your special task to bring to the world in your day, a strong love, and compassion for the man, that Enochi's became. And from your gentle, and tender heart, you are to influence your people, to deeply, and profoundly love Matzah the Lamb. And the covenant he spoke of, is the very covenant of love. And duty cannot motivate a covenant that will ease his burden, but, it must be brought into the hearts of men simply, and only, built upon a deep, and personal love for the man. And the people must covenant to love him, and when their love for him grows, they must covenant in a renewed way, even until they covenant 7 times. And that covenant will then be permeant, and reside in their hearts never to be moved. And little son, this love for the man, that Enochi's became is your special task, and it is one for which you are well suited. Amen. And when I saw this, I knew that Mahal was the father of Mahujah, and Azri, and the grandfather of Enoch, and that they inherited their love for the Lord from their grandfather Mahal. And I said, in my heart, So Lord, Enoch descended from the people of Qatar. And he was an outsider to the people of the regions of Anak. Why, Lord, was it so? And the Spirit revealed to me that the people of Anak were sedentary, and they did not travel. And their view of creation was held to that which they encountered where they were in their daily lives. And it would be necessary that a man arise, who would traverse across the land, in order to see the world with an all-encompassing view, one who could by reason of his background know, and love the man that Enochi's became a man who could teach a knowledge of the living water, that is reproval repentance, and forgiveness, and one who could thus reprimand the watchers who did not attend the council of heaven, to rebel against the great Holy One. And upon hearing this, I was greatly informed about Enoch. And I knew that in the task that Matzah was undertaking encompassed both those who would remain after the flood, and also those who would return to Eden with Enoch when he was taken, for he walked with Enochi's. And it came to pass that I saw after this, that Micah moved his hands from Mahal to Rishuia. And he said, Rishuia, you too will bless Anokized, for you will be a force in the land of Qatar, to influence the people, so that they can begin to pattern their lives together in holy ways, and thus establish a covenant and patterns of righteousness. And they will learn from you to set in place a great promise, to love Anokized, and patterns of behavior that will sustain them in holiness and intelligence for future generations that go abroad out of this place. And right relationships will be set in place by your deeds that will issue forth from you, and your posterity to shine like the sun, to enlighten the eyes, and move like clouds of purity, to illustrate the presence of Anokized. And the spirits of the two of you will be joined together to please the Holy Great One in his gentle desires. And the posterity of the two of you will be joined together before the face of many people. And the two of you are to see to it that the spirit of Eden which has descended upon this people will continue to be strong for many days. And know, dear little ones, that there are many forces against it. But repentance will sustain you, and yours all your days. And I saw that Micah confirmed these blessings upon the two lads. And he anointed their hands and feet with the oil of life, and he said prayers over them. And he put yellow paint upon their cheeks, and little reed rings hung on each ear. And all the people looked on with respect and reverence. And it came to pass that the people were much moved in their hearts to hear the words of blessing by their old father. And they spoke excitedly about the prospect of Micah being able to visit the pool of heaven. And I saw with Urim that both lads were speechless, and left humble in their love for Micah. And they were quiet, and they passed the night in the dwelling of Micah, and he embraced them both. And in the morning, he told them that in the old way, the pool of heaven was called Baraka Shema, and that is to say the pool of heaven. And everyone must always remember to kneel down, and bless Anokized before drinking from the pool. And after these things the boys stayed for some few days in Rava, which is the name of the encampment of Micah. And it was called this by the people, because a seer and a prophet lived there. And the people of the encampment gathered together to rejoice in the happiness of their old father. And they made a feast, and they made plans, and they said, after the Asib harvest, we will take our father to see the pool of heaven. And a new joy in knowing the Lord entered into Micah and the people. And I knew in my heart that these two lads were the very beginning of a foundation being laid. That would result in defining the spiritual authority that Matzah himself would carry when he dwelt upon the earth among men, and that theirs was the first of 7 generations that would build upon each other to result in authority after the manner of the holy order that Matzah himself would enter into in the task of his earthly ministry. And after these things, the people of the encampment bestowed gifts upon the lads in abundance. And Mahal and Rishuia were very grateful to them. And it was discovered that the gifts were too much for them to carry. And they departed to go down to the encampment of Canaan and Shamar. And the people awaited their return. And they were grateful to the Lord for the rich blessings that were bestowed upon their sons. And the news of all these things was spread abroad. And it came to pass, after the Asib harvest came and went, in the Pishon valley, there was no sign of the people of Micah. But after a while the whole troop of the people of Rava arrived, bearing the gifts they had given to the lads. And the people of Canaan and Shamar were surprised indeed to hear from the listeners all that had transpired when Mahal and Rishuia visited Micah. And the lads had not told of the details of the blessings. And Shamar inquired to see if they had difficulties along the way. And the people said, the Asib comes later in the high country. And we had to travel gently for our old father. And the people rested for some days, while plans were made for taking Micah to see his pool of heaven. And all the encampment of Canaan was determined they would go with them. And the provision was set by. And it was seen to be an exciting adventure, and nothing like it had been known before. And Micah was very old, and plans had to be carefully done. So the men made rafts to travel up the river for those who could not traverse it. And they traveled on gently. And when they came to the clear stream, Micah was filled with the Spirit. And he said that he felt like he was going home, and he longed to be with Aruka once again. And the people traveled upon the smoother places upon the plain. And the anticipation in the hearts of the people, to see the pool of heaven, was strong. And everyone was reverent in their behavior. And Micah could hardly wait to be there. And it came to pass, that runners who went ahead, brought word that the meadow of the pool of heaven, was to be one more day's journey away. And the people camped a little way off so they could be in place for Micah to visit the pool in the freshness of the morning. And out of respect, they saw to it that Micah was first to go there. And when he entered the meadow, and gazed upon the pool of heaven, his strength failed him, and he sat upon the ground, for the joy of it, and he was carried to the edge of the pool, where he knelt down, and blessed Anochist. And the pool gushed upwards, and the sound of it bubbling was very sweet indeed. And all the people came to drink, as the Spirit led them in their feelings of worthiness. And at last, Micah was left alone there, and he could be heard to be singing praises, and speaking openly to Matzah the Lamb. And to me, the songs sounded familiar. And all the people withdrew a short distance, and encircled the pool. And they all praised Anochist, and many tears of joy mingled with the waters that went happily down the way. And as I looked with Urim, I tried to comprehend what it was that they were all feeling. And I began to understand that for them, the very Spirit of Matzah himself issued forth from the pool. And the people loved the man, that Anochist became. And that Spirit invited them to look inside themselves to discover their need to be pure, and holy in all their conduct for his sake. And it beckoned them to be clean, and virtuous in the purity of their lives. And I could feel the Spirit of love, and humble repentance sweep over the people. And drinking the water while on their knees, caused the Spirit of forgiveness to enter into tired deepest places of their hearts. It was the living water indeed. And just as the water arose up, and moved out to go down along the way, Matzah is the living water that goes out with us along our way to bless us, and sustain us in all our trials, and to bear us up, and sustain us from on high, in a way similar to the stream of the pool, emerging from the very heart of the mountain. And I know that Matzah emerges from Elda, the dwelling place of Anochist, to bubble up, and flow over. And I saw that intimate and personal love for him abounded. And as I pondered upon this scene, a deeper understanding came to me, about the meaning of the name Matzah. For I had not encountered such a strength of the spirit of humility, and forgiveness in the living of their lives as I was seeing in those who were now displayed before my eyes. And never before this moment, had I ever grasped just how gentle, and harmless, the Lord is in all his dealing with the children of men. And the idea of the living water, that follows to go out with us, being associated with a lamb became clear to me. And I pondered upon these things a good long while. And I could see that Anochist was well pleased with these events in the land of Qatar. And from this pool, a foundation of love for Matzah the Lamb would arise in the hearts of the righteous, that would sustain them in all that lay before them. And it came to pass, that all the people withdrew from the pool, and encamped in the meadow. And Micah camped in a place where he would see the pool in the moonlight. And in the morning when it began to be light, there was heard the soft sound of singing coming from the pool, which awakened the people. And the young men went to get Micah, so he could hear the singing, but he could not be found. And they went forward gently to see if they could discover the source of the singing. And they found Micah kneeling next to the pool, with his legs folded under, and the sounds of singing resounded off the cliffs with gentleness. And after a while, when the singing had ceased, a daughter of Micah approached, and she found that her father had passed away. And all the people thought it was the earth that had been singing. And it seemed to me, that Micah had lived just waiting for the day, that the spirit and presence of Matzah the Lamb was fully come, and the conditions among his people were firmly in the straight way, that Anochist desired of them in order for his people to be properly founded for the future, before he departed to be with his father in Eden, being full of years. And the people were grieved at the loss of their old father. But they rejoiced that he had found the pool of heaven at last. And the people carried him down to where the cliffs along the river were of a sufficient height, that the grandeur of Mount Qatar could be seen. And there they buried him.
End of chapter. Please subscribe to get updated future uploads. Thanks for listening and shalom.